You finally said something. After months of processing it internally, turning it over in your mind, making sure you were not exaggerating, making sure you had the facts straight. You opened your mouth and told someone what was happening. And they look at you like you were the problem because she got there first. Weeks ago, maybe months ago, she told your family she was worried about you. She mentioned to friends that you'd been so stressed lately. She dropped comments about your anger or your mood swings or how hard it's been for you. She positioned herself as a concerned partner, the one trying to hold things together while you fell apart. By the time you spoke, the story had already been written, and you were not the victim in it. You were the villain. For men, this lands in a specific place. A man's world is supposed to mean something. His credibility is tied to his identity. When he speaks, he expects to be heard, to be taken seriously, to be believed. When he discovers that his word means nothing, that the story has been decided without him, something fundamental cracks. He was erased. This video is about a tactic that steals your voice, which is controlling narratives. We'll look at how this tactic works and why it's so effective against men. Then we'll walk through 4 ways it operates. Scripted speech, where your abuser dictates the version of events you are allowed to tell. Selective story ownership, where she speaks freely while you are punished for speaking at all. Pre-emptive framing, where she shapes how others see you before you have said a word. And narrative retaliation, where any attempt to tell your truth is met with punishment from your abuser. We'll close with tools for protecting your truth when the story has already been written without you. And for those of you who are new here, this is Stand Again, a lived experience platform for male victims of family violence. Abuse is not limited to one gender, but this channel focuses on the male perspective because it is so often misunderstood. If this content helps you, please like, subscribe, and add the word Stand Again into the chat. Those 2 words might make the difference for a victim of family violence. Controlling narratives is a tactic that dictates what version of reality gets told and who gets to tell it. She controls the story of the relationship, the story of you, and eventually the story you tell yourself. Your version of events becomes unspeakable. Your abuser's becomes the only one that exists. This tactic works because story is power. Whoever controls the narrative controls how the relationship is understood by friends, by family, by professionals, and even by you. If she can shape how others see you, she can isolate you from support. If she can dictate what you're allowed to say, her behavior never gets examined. And if your abuser can make you doubt your own version of events, she can keep you trapped, unable to name what's happening, even to yourself. This tactic is particularly effective against men because of how men process and communicate. Men often process internally before speaking. We turn things over in our minds. We make sure we have the facts right. We don't want to say something we'll have to walk back later. By the time a man is ready to speak about something this serious, he's usually spent weeks or even months making sure he's not exaggerating, making sure it's real, making sure he can stand behind what he says. That's how we're taught to operate. Think before you speak, be certain before you commit. Your abuser does not operate this way. While you're processing, she's positioning. While you're making sure you're being fair, your abuser's building her version of events with everyone who matters. By the time you open your mouth, the narrative has already been set. Your need to be certain before speaking has worked against you. There's also what it means for a man to speak about something like this at all. Men are taught that complaining is weakness, that airing relationship problems is disloyal, that a real man handles his business without involving others. So when a man finally decides to speak, he's already breaking his own code. He's already crossed a line he was taught never to cross. And when he speaks and no one believes him, when he's met with suspicion or dismissal, he can't even respect himself for trying. He broke his own rule and got nothing for it. The silence afterward is shame. Men are also taught to protect. to provide safety, stability, credibility. When a man cannot protect his own story, his own reputation, his own name, he's failed at something fundamental. If she can turn his children's teachers against him, if she can poison his relationships with his own family, if she can make colleagues look at him differently, he has not just lost control of the narrative. He has lost control of something he was supposed to be able to defend. That failure cuts deep. And when your abuser crafts a convincing public persona of being warm, generous, high functioning, the story control becomes complete. Anyone he confides in already has a different version of events, one where she's the loving partner and he must be overreacting. The more charming she seems to others, the more isolated he becomes, and the more he starts to doubt what actually happened. Let's explore four distinct patterns of controlling narrative, each one from a slightly different angle. The first type is scripted speech. Scripted speech is when your abuser dictates the content of what you are allowed to say. She tells you what version of events to present, which details to include, which to omit, and how to frame the relationship to others. You are coached into a narrative that protects her image and suppresses your experience. The mechanism works through instruction and enforcement. She might give direct orders, such as, do not tell your mother about that. Or if the therapist asked, just say, we're working on our communication. Or even, I don't want you talking to your friends about us. Or it might be more subtle, a reaction you've learned to anticipate, a consequence you've learned to avoid. You know which topics are off limits, you know which version of events is acceptable, and you stay within those lines because crossing them has a cost. The tactic often hides behind reasonable sounding principles, like we don't air our dirty laundry, or what happens in our relationship is between us, or even it's disloyal to talk about our problems with other people. These almost sound like relationship values. What they actually do is isolate you. They make your truth unspeakable. They turn your voice into a liability. For men, there's a particular vulnerability here. Men are already inclined towards privacy around relationship struggles. We already believe that handling things internally is the mature approach. So when your abuser frames silence as loyalty, it aligns with what we were already taught. The cage feels like doing the right thing. By the time you realize you've been isolated, you've been silenced, you've been cooperating with your own silencing for years. You learn to edit yourself before you speak. You rehearse what's permitted. You stay within the boundaries of the approved story. And somewhere in all that editing, you stop recognizing your own voice. You're reciting her version of events. You're performing a script that she wrote. And every time you open your mouth, you're reinforcing a reality that erases you. Type 2 is selective story ownership. Selective story ownership is when she claims the exclusive right to narrate. She can speak freely, sharing details, opinions, and grievances with whomever she chooses. She vents to her mother, confides in friends, processes with colleagues. That's called healthy for her. When you speak, even cautiously, even to one trusted person, it's called betrayal. The mechanism is a double standard enforced through punishment. She maintains the right to frame the story however she wants. You are denied that same right. If you attempt to share your perspective, you're accused of being disloyal, manipulative, or even abusive. If you try to correct the narrative, you're playing the victim. The rules are clear. Your abuser speaks, you do not. Her version is allowed, yours is not. This pattern exploits a cultural bias that already exists. Women processing their relationships out loud is seen as healthy emotional expression. Men doing the same is seen as complaining. She can talk to her entire social circle about your flaws, and it's called needing support. You open up to one friend, and it's called airing dirty laundry. Your abuser leans into this. The effect is that her version spreads while yours stays trapped within you. She's building alliances, shaping perceptions, establishing her narrative as the accepted truth. You are silent because you've learned that speaking has consequences. And in that silence, her story takes hold. It shapes how others see you. Eventually, it shapes how you see yourself. You start to wonder if maybe her version is the real one. Maybe you are the problem she says you are. The third way is preemptive reframing. Preemptive reframing is when she shapes how others see you before you've had a chance to speak. She plants seeds of doubt, concern, or suspicion with the people who matter, like family, friends, teachers, colleagues, long before you realize a story is being told. By the time you try to explain your reality, the frame has already been set. You're no longer starting from neutral, you're starting from behind. The mechanism is a form of strategic positioning. She does not launch an obvious smear campaign. Instead, she expresses concern. She sounds worried. He's been so stressed lately. I'm trying to support him, but it's really hard. He has these anger issues he's working on, or I don't know what's going on with him. The framing sounds caring. It positions her as a reasonable, supportive partner dealing with a difficult man. When you eventually speak up about the truth of the situation, everything you say is filtered through this false narrative. Your truth looks like defensiveness. Your reality looks like denial. This pattern is devastating for men because of the cultural assumptions that already exist. When a woman expresses concern about her male partner, she is heard with sympathy and trust. When she describes him as stressed, reactive, volatile, or even angry, those words stick as though they are truth and they are not questioned. They confirm what people already expect to hear about a man. The assumption that men are dangerous runs deep. She doesn't have to convince anyone of anything radical. She just has to activate a bias that is already there. For many men, the most disorientating part of this is how invisible it is. You do not know a story is being told about you. You just notice that people might be treating you slightly differently. Conversations might even feel guarded. Teachers seem oddly suspicious. Family members act cautious. There's a shift you can sense but cannot explain. By the time you discover a false narrative that's been built around you, it has already settled into people's minds as truth, and dislodging that feels impossible. Type 4 is narrative retaliation. Narrative retaliation is when she punishes you for speaking at all. Any attempt to share your truth, even in private, even with a therapist, even with one trusted friend, is met with dire consequences. The goal is to teach you that speaking your truth about the abuse is dangerous, that the cost of telling your story will always outweigh the benefit. The mechanism is punishment and fear. When she discovers you have spoken to someone, she responds with rage, emotional withdrawal, character attacks, or escalation of the abuse. You'll hear things like, "Why are you turning people against me? I can't believe you told them that. You're humiliating me." Or, "If you loved me, you wouldn't need to talk to anyone else about us." The punishment does not need to be physical, it just needs to be painful enough that you learn the lesson. Silence is safer. This pattern is distinct from scripted speech. Scripted speech controls the content of what you say. Narrative retaliation punishes the act of speaking itself. You're not being told which version to present, you're being taught that any version, any disclosure, any attempt to share the reality of the abuse you are in with any person will cost you. The goal is your total silence, complete containment of the truth. For men who already hesitate to speak about relationship struggles, this tactic is particularly effective. You already were not sure if it was appropriate to say anything. You already felt conflicted about involving others, and now you've learned that the one time you did reach out, it made everything worse. That confirmation settles in deep. You tell yourself, It's not worth it. You tell yourself you'll handle it on your own and you carry everything alone because that's the only option that doesn't lead to punishment. The result is isolation that you enforce on yourself. You stop reaching out, you stop confiding in anyone, you learn that your story is a weapon and you're not allowed to use it. You carry the truth inside you where no one can hear it, where it can't help you, where it slowly turns into doubt about whether it's even true at all. If your story has been stolen, these tools are about protecting your truth so it survives, even if no one hears it just yet. The first tool is private documentation. Start keeping a record of what actually happens: dates, times, what was said, how it made you feel. This serves two purposes. First, it anchors you to reality when the narrative around you is being rewritten. When you're told you're exaggerating, you can look at your notes and remember, no, this is what happened. I'm not making this up. Second, it creates evidence that may matter later, whether for legal protection, custody discussions, or simply proving to yourself or your therapist that your experience was real. Documentation protects your clarity when everyone else is accepting her controlled narrative. The second tool is finding a witness. You don't need to convince everyone, you need one person who knows the truth, someone outside the relationship who can reflect your reality back to you: a friend, a family member, a therapist, a coach, someone who has seen enough to know that the story being told about you is not the whole picture. When the false narrative around you says one thing and your internal experience says another, that one witness becomes your anchor. They remind you that your perception is valid. They keep you from drowning in her version of events. The third tool is strategic patience. You do not have to fight every battle right now. If speaking up leads to retaliation, if correcting the narrative makes things worse, you are allowed to wait. Strategic patience means recognizing that the cost of speaking may be too high in this moment. Instead, you gather your resources, you build your evidence, you protect yourself while you prepare. The story is not over. You're waiting for the right time to tell it. If your truth has been silenced, if your story has been stolen, if you've learned to edit yourself just to survive, you need to hear this. Your version of events is your life, and you have every right to tell it. In a healthy relationship, truth is honored even when it's difficult, even when it leads to discomfort. Disagreements are approached with curiosity. Your version of events is met with interest. You're allowed to remember things differently, to express how something made you feel, and to have that perspective respected. You do not have to justify every feeling or prove every memory. Your emotional reality is treated as valid. In healthy love, both people get to speak. Both people get to be heard. Both people's stories matter. No one is punished for naming their experience. No one has to rehearse which version is safest to tell. No one loses their voice just to keep the peace. Your story matters, even if no one has heard it yet, even if the world has accepted a different version. The truth is still yours, and one day you'll be free to tell it. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.